Good afternoon and welcome to the Open Lay online of the University of Gastronomic Science, and in particular to the presentation of the Master of Applied Gastronomy Culinary Art. Before we start to see what is the course about, a few information, a few words about the Pollenzo Food Lab. The Pollenzo Food Lab has been one of the last activity, let's say, that the university started, because we've been talking for a long time that for us gastronomic sciences is whatever is dealing with food, but for a long time we didn't have the place. Now, since 2012, the space became available, and so we have a space that in the past was actually a restaurant that became the Pollenzo Food Lab. For us, the Pollenzo Food Lab is a space in which we do what we call active learning, because in it, theory and practice meet and strongly intertwine in what we use for didactic. So in different courses, actually, we use the Pollenzo Food Lab as to show some of the things that we explain. The Pollenzo Food Lab is structured in different parts. We have a part that is really like a didactic space, so with small benches and seats. And then really connected to it with no division, there is the area where we have the three islands that can host 8 people each, that we use for the practice, and then there is a professional kitchen. The Pollenzo Food Lab, even more important, is made by people, and me, I am the let's say the scientific coordinator, but the three really souls that make possible what happened in the Pollenzo Food Lab is Carol Povigna, that is the responsible of it, together with Nawel Buracco, and since a few months also Matteo Bigi. What about the Master of Applied Gastronomy Culinary Arts? First of all, is a master of a first level. That means that we have 90 university credits, and is a master in which we use culinary arts, and so cuisine, as a tool to study food in a much more broad way. So I always say that if students are just interested on learning how to cook, is not the master they suppose to do. Is in this master we put together different disciplines, where at the beginning that are important to understand some basics, because when we designed the master, mainly we concentrated, let's say, on the scientific aspects related to cuisine, and then is structured in a way that I'm going to say. So again, the Master of Applied Gastronomy Culinary Arts is not just a course about cuisine, but is a course using food to look at food in a much, using cuisine to look at food in a much more broad way. When we designed this course, that is now actually the next one will be the fourth edition. Actually, the fourth is just started, let's say, the next one, so that one you may be interested will be the fifth. We were thinking especially at what will be the task that the cooks in the future or will have to face. And so we like to say that in this course we are cooking the future to be able to cook in the future, in this way to become the cook of the future. When we design and also to teach in this course, we invited some former students of the University of Gastronomic Science that are actually working in different areas, anywhere related with restaurants and food preparation, because in this way we thought we could be more really on deep in what is really the reality of this kind of work. And so some of them we have been talking, we had some chat with them while we were designing, and as more as possible we invite former students to be part active of the teaching. We have also to say that almost every year, as I say, we are now just started the 4th edition of the course. We do some small changes because well, first of all, the world is changing, and then also we find improvements possible every year. Here you can see which are the disciplines that are in what we call the basics. And as you can see, mainly they are in the field of sciences. So there is food chemistry, where we talk about the gastronomic molecules, because we have to know which kind of molecules we have in food to understand what is happening or what may happen between them. Then there is food physics, because when we talk about emulsion foams, and so they are different state of the matter. Then there is food microbiology, there is taste science, and then in which we understand how it works, the sense of taste. And then also something about psychology and cognitive neurosciences, because to understand how the brain is working when we make a choice in relationship with food, we think is important. Then there is something about sensory and consumer science, something about ecology, to understand that we live in a very complex and intertwined world, some information about animal and crop production, not to become expert in the two, but we think that the cook has to know which are the ways in which mainly we can produce the food that we get then on our plate. And then something about the scientific cuisine, because as I'm going to explain a bit more soon, we have to understand which are the processes that are important in food transformation and what may happen during a gastronomic transformation. And then something about basic cooking techniques. As you see, we start from basics because in our masters, in all the masters in Pollenzo, one of the characteristics is that we have students with very different backgrounds, because they come from different countries and also from different backgrounds for what they've studied in their undergrad. So we want to bring them all at the same level. But I am happy to say that in the years, we had in our courses together, exactly in the same course, students that have several years of experience in the kitchen, and then anyway they found interesting what we were doing, or we had people that has never been to working in the kitchen, and they were able to follow completely. This is also because I insist about these basics, because I was saying, the Master of Applied Gastronomy and Culinary Arts is not really a course about how to learn to cook, because we are more interested than in the how, in explaining the why transformation happen, what is happening during a transformation. And that is because we think that this is the only way that that students can use to understand during the course. And then since the practice of cuisine is a process that usually takes a very long time, if they know why transformation are happening, what is happening during transformation, they will be faster also in learning during their future experience, because look into what is happening, they may understand what's behind. And this also will be a very important tool to improve and to realize their creativity. So this is something on which we insist a lot, even if of course then at the end we say culinary arts are important. After this first part about the basics, the rest of the course that takes about a bit less, let's say, than 1/3 of the total hours in Pollenzo, that we will see the didactic hours are about a bit more than 600, and a bit less than 200 are the hours for the whole basics that I've just listed. And then the course goes on using a process as a way to proceed. Why? That is because in a transformations that may happen also in different food culture, for example, what is common is the process. That can be, for example, like to cook in an atmosphere, in a place, I mean, in an environment with water, or to cook in a dry way, like in the oven, and so. So the preparation could be different, but the process are the same. So in this way, we think that, again, how I say, the student can understand what is happening during a process, also to understand what can be done to reach the point that somebody may have in his head to prepare a dish. And this also will allow us to be able to respond, to reply when somebody's asking, but which kind of cuisine we do? We don't do Italian or French or whatever, because we study the basics and then the process. Here we can see which are the process in which we have structured the course. We have scouting and sourcing, and within this, there is a part about scouting and scouting as a research, as we can use scouting, that is to look for products, and then foraging, and both theory and practice. Now we know that this became quite fashionable, the fact of foraging, but actually foraging has always been existed, because non-cultivated plants has always been very important to give what we can call now the sense of place of different preparation. And then we do something about cuisine gardening, since more and more there are restaurants and chefs that have their own garden, and so cooperating with some cuisine gardener working the area around Pollenzo, we face also this problem. Plus, in Pollenzo, as you have seen probably from the presentation of the university, there is also a garden within what we call the didactic garden. And then something about edible biodiversity, that is how we can use the biodiversity of a place and transfer it in a place. Now we know that we can talk about the Nordic cuisine or the cuisine in Peru or in other places, and of course the biodiversity that gets to the plate is quite different. Then we have another process that is from raw to cook, and also this one is divided in different subgroups. The first one is how to treat raw material, which attention we have to give when we have raw materials that we have to take care of. And then there is something about cold meat maturation, cut and deboning, of course, to be able to cut in a proper way different parts to the bone is also a way, for example, to reduce waste, because now most of the restaurants, unfortunately, they just get the parts they are just selling, and while if you can work on the whole part of the animal, in the whole animal, you also will reduce what is the waste. You are more aware. Cold meat maturation, to know what's happening, for example, from when we sacrifice an animal until when we can actually use it. As you have seen, even if for sure you will not see a course or a process that is about sustainability or upcycling or no waste and so, but actually you will not see as a precise subject, because that is the philosophy that is behind the whole course itself. And so this also the other thing I want to say, that talking about meat, we know that to be more sustainable in the future, we have to eat less meat, but even more important is which meat, for example. So that's why we have anyway this part, but then of course it depends what you talk about. Then there is something about texture, because textures are extremely important to make a final preparation, and also very important part in the palatability, or which are from when we go from raw to cook, when we use a different way of eating and of cooking itself. Working for a planned result is to understand which are the steps that has to be considered to achieve a certain result, so a certain kind of gastronomic preparation, which are the steps that has to be taken to reach to that point. Then there is a part about fermentation. We know that now also is fermentation are quite high in the quotation, but in the other end, wine, cheese, and cured meat are fermented product as well. But we are more focusing on the fermentation that can be realized in restaurants. In one side, fermentation lab and research, that is what we can think to do and to do, let's say, new using this kind of instrument. And then we have fermentation in restaurants, in which we invite a chef that is working in a restaurant in Italy, but he had experience also at Noma for a while. And so, because we think it's very different if you want to do some fermentation to become then part of a dish in a restaurant, than if you ferment to make drinks or whatever. And then there is something about fermentation practice, because I always say cure meat, they are a fermented process, and of course also all bread and the product that are produced in oven. Then there is the part about seasoning, that is not how to make the sauces. So seasoning is not in this sense, but is about what happens when you infuse and extract different plants or fruits, for example, because we may think that if you have a fruit or a plant that is available just in a certain season, you have to know what to do if you want to extract the flavoring compounds that you have in it, and to be able also to preserve. And so there is something about this. And then in the art of herbs and spice mixing, well, beside having different herbs and spice, is very important how to use it. Sorry, there is somebody that has the audio open. If you can close the audio, otherwise there is noise. Thank you. And so this is are the subject that we face in this seasoning part. Then there is something about pairing. What is pairing? It's not about which is the best things that we can put together to have the best results. Also because in this case, depends what is the mind that think which one is the result that is wanted. But we have cooperating with people like Eloise Villaseca, that is the director of the La Masia, that is the, let's say, the research lab that is behind El Celar de Can Roca, or with other people working in the fields of neuroscience, but with experience actually in restaurants. We think about how can I create a dish, which factors I should consider when we put together different ingredients to become a dish. And then also very important, how can give a name to a plate. To give a name to a plate is extremely important, because it's the first way of communication, because the client, when it comes to the restaurant, he read the menu. So to name a dish is very important, and also to plate it. And in this is very important the neurosciences aspect, because now there are people studying what is, which are the first thing that somebody look in a place, and so. And then which are the parameters I have to consider when I want to build up a menu. What I have to consider, of course, then I say again, depends on who is thinking. That's why different chefs have different ways, but we try so not again to say how to do, but to raise up which are the points that has to be considered. And then something about the pairing of food and drinks, that not necessarily is just food and wine, but in this part, for example, we have the cooperation with a former student that for many years has been working in the, let's say, in the big system of relay in Copenhagen. He's sommelier. He was a wine importer, and also students of this master will do a tour in some wine to some winemakers in the Lange with him. And then something about preserving. Why preserving in a kitchen? Well, because more and more chefs do some transformation of some food, like when there is a season when you have the best tomatoes and you maybe have the interest to prepare some sauce to be used in a different time of the year, or the same for fruits and so. Or to prepare some kind of dishes. So we have something about smoking as a way to extend the life and also to give flavor to food. And then in food transformation lab is about the small preserving and transformation that we can do in the cuisine of a restaurant. So could be also because more and more are the restaurants also preparing then some preserved food that they can sell with their label. Of course, it's very different if you do it in a big scale or in a small scale, or drying again for fruits and vegetables. How can you do and use this technique both to preserve and also to prepare some new ingredients? And then what is the whole ingredient approach is okay, is with what can I do with pumpkins, or what can I do with zucchini without wasting any part. And of course, you have to think what you can do with the skin of a pumpkin, or with the most or with the part of the zucchini that is attached to the plant. And so this is what we mean by a whole ingredient approach. Then something about innovating. So there is, before the contribution of a person that has experience in writing guides, food guides, and so that will explain what happened, some of the important process that happened in the world of the restaurants in the last decades. And then why research and development is important in a cuisine. And then what shall we do to develop new products? Because one of the possibility of the students at the end of this course is not to have their own restaurant. Actually, less and less we see are the people that want to do that, or that will really go and work in a kitchen. But for example, they may work for companies that are developing food products. And so because even big companies now are trying the approach not to have new food design, let's see, by engineering since the beginning, but to go from bottom up. So say, okay, we have these ingredients like plant-based food. We can design it in a very different way if is a chef coming up with the recipe, or if he's an engineer that is coming up with a product. And then something about contemporary cuisine. Well, contemporary necessarily is something that keep changing, but some aspects that could be used also as highlight and to understand better contemporary cuisine. And for this, we use the chefs that are actually working our days. Managing is not the managing in the sense with numbers and so calculation and so, but is managing a systemic restaurant. What is a systemic restaurant? Now more and more cuisines have also a farm behind, or they have their own producers of different ingredients, or they may also have a bakery, and so, and the whole makes a system. So this is what we meant by a systemic restaurant. Managing human resources is very important. It's something that we had during COVID, in which has been more and more a problem. But to have an idea about it's possible to manage the people, also because we have to think that a kitchen and anyway a restaurant is mainly made by people, and so human resources are extremely important. How can I manage consultancy again? If I am a chef and I work all for companies that produce that want to that come to me with some questions, I may contribute to solve. How shall I manage this kind of consultancy? And for this, we have former students from Pollenzo that have actually quite succeed in have a company of consultancy applied to food. And then manage a connection again is a different way to see than the systemic restaurant, but anyway, more and more who is operating in a kitchen is not alone, has to build up a very different relationship. So in some cases, just the same system. So that has both, I will say, the farm, the restaurants, the bakery, and so in other case is just the cook and the restaurant that then has to make this connection outside. And this part is extremely important. And also here to do this part, we have somebody that is actually working in a restaurant and that has learned over the year how important is to manage this connection. We are getting to the end, and there is communicating is extremely important. I already mentioned it before when I was talking about how to name a dish, and beside that, it's very important how to describe then a plate, both to the client at the table, but then also food critics is important. And also here we use people that are used to write on guides that can tell which are the aspects that people doing food critics take in account. Food communication and media, more and more food we know now is actually very much communicated, maybe sometimes too much, but to know how to promote and to communicate the food that a certain restaurant or cook make is extremely important. And so working with a colleague working in Pollenzo in the communication office, and also is the responsible of the magazine New Gastronomy, we face these aspects. And then also cookbooks. Cookbooks are still quite relevant in the field. And so also here, which are the factors that we have to consider if we want to think about a new cookbook. And so, and we have the cooperation with the editor of Phaidon, so with the person responsible, among others, also of the books about cuisine. The last process is commoning, because we think this is also a very important aspect. And in commoning, for example, we include the mass catering, because it's true that most of the people think that the dream of a cook is to have 3 Michelin stars, but we like also to remember that to cook for other people, especially in a canteen and mass catering, is extremely important. It has much more relevance, this kind of cuisine, on the health of people, and therefore also on the planet, we can say, than if you run a 3 Michelin star restaurant. And here we are very happy to have for this part Daniel Giusti, that is a chef that in 2014 decided, after many years as the right arm of René Redzepi and Noma, he decided he wanted to work for mass catering, and he built up what is called Brigade, his company in US, that is trying really to change the system of mass catering in schools, at least in the schools where he's working. So we're very happy that we work with him. Then something about cuisine and social projects, because more and more cooking cuisine is used to bring back people that has a problem in society, or to include refugees or migrants, and so. Then we have some hours with the president of Parabere Forum, that is this association of women working in the field of gastronomy, because the problem of gender in cuisine has always been very strong and still our days is not been solved at all. The last part that I am mentioning is how can we use cuisine as a tool for food literacy. What is food literacy is um, to be aware, to become aware, to get knowledge about food and all all the other fields to which food has a relationship, not last the environment and so using cuisine as a tool to increase the knowledge about food. And this is very important, is used this instrument a lot also in school, for example, because if we wanted to make better consumers of the future, we have to make sure that this young generation have knowledge about what is food, where it's coming from, how can be prepared, and how can be transformed. So I hope in this way I gave you a panorama of which are the different courses within this master. Very important are study trips because one of the characteristics of all the courses at the University of Gastronomic Sciences is the fact that we bring students in some trips that can be in Italy or abroad, depends from the programs and also depends from the years. You may imagine that in the last years, due to COVID, we have quite to change the plans about study trips. But I insist always to say to students that also in this case, more than the place in which students go is the method of the study trip, is the fact that we go in a certain area. And in our case, we ask to chefs working there to make us to know the producer of the food they transform, to visit some place where food is transformed, in part because not all the ingredients from which you start are raw and so on. So this is very important to understand the system that is around the restaurant. In this course, we have two study trips, one of about 7 or 8 days and one a bit longer, that according to the situation, they will be done one in Europe and one extra Europe, or they will be done one in Italy and one in Europe. We will see. The first year we started this master, we're supposed to do Catalonia and Mexico. We just managed to do Catalonia, and then Mexico, due to COVID, has been cancelled. And then actually that year transformed, let's say, to a Sicily study trip that anyway was fantastic because Sicily is very important to understand, for example, Italian cuisine. And then this year, probably again will be Catalonia and another one in Italy because the situation is still not so good. So in the master we just started, we will have this one study trip in Italy and one in Catalonia. Beside that, then we have several, about 8-10 study trips of 1 day. Actually, one is one of 3 days, and then 7 or 8 of 1 day. Because being in the region in which we are, Piemonte, and having very strong connection with some producer, we think it would have been a shame just to go more far to lose this important knowledge that we have there. Or, for example, a study trip is really done to complete the part about meat production, the deboning, and so, because we usually go to visit a cooperative in which one of the person coming to teach that part is working. Or, as I was mentioning before, the visit to some canteens in the area. Here we see some picture of past edition. Of course, as you can see, there will be something about how to use knives and so, because they are important tools, and also how to use your hands when you make some different products and so. The next edition of the master will start in October 23, and the graduation will happen in October 24. Courses start in October, and they go on until about the end of June, between lectures in Pollenzo and study trips. Then July, August, and September are for the internship, because the internship is a very important part of this course, and the internship can be done or in one restaurant, more than one restaurant, according to what the students want to do, or also not necessarily in a restaurant. It can be an agriturismo, can be in a farm. It really it depends. Altogether, as I was saying, the hours in Pollenzo are about 600. Half of them are of practice, because for each process that I was mentioning, this is also a practical part, even if was not listed there. So about half of the hours are of practice. And then there are the study trips and the internships. The course is in English. In Pollenzo, we still have the mandatory presence of at least 70% of the lecture, the lecture, sorry. 90 university credits that for our course, it means about a bit more than 600 hours really done in Pollenzo. Application deadline is still to be determined, but you can apply whenever. So, but probably for this course, usually is about July, but the exact date has not been decided yet. The fee are 16,500 euro, and there is one total fee exemption. So one scholarship. In the fee are included all the books. No, the books actually we just give 3 or 4 books, and then all the materials, and of course all the study trips. At the end, if you have a first level degree already, you will get a degree of a master. But every year we may also have usually one also students that didn't get before a 3 undergrad degree, and we may accept them anyway. They will be auditor, we can say. So at the end, they will just get a certificate of attendance, not the degree of the master, because to get that is mandatory to have a 3-year degree. And to get the final degree, students has to pass all the exams. There are 3, 4 exams for the basics, and then usually there is one exam in each process. And students have to pass all the exams to be able to get the degree. Here we see the group of students of the first edition of the MAG in Applied Gastronomy Culinary Arts. As you can see, usually our courses are very international. So the number of students maximum we get is about 25, let's say 25, 26, depends. Right now, this year, we have 23 students in the course. And I think we have 8 or 9 nationality included in the course. And this is one more big added value to come to study in general in Pollenzo, not just in this course, because you will be in a system of about 500 students coming from all over the world, and this is quite important. Here are some produce from our garden, and with this I've finished the presentation. If you have questions, you can write to this email address, segreteria@unisg.it, for information about the process of enrollment and deadlines and so. While if you have questions more about what is the course itself, you can write also at this other email, pollenzofoodlab@unisg.it, and we will answer you about questions you may have. There are not too many people connected right now, so I ask to the person, Adela, if you have questions. And if your questions, I will be happy to reply. And if not, I will just say goodbye. Anyway, even if not many people are connected now, to those that may listen to the presentation in the next few days.